You may have heard about the citizens in Bristol, Virginia, battling to keep their town from being invaded by the abortion industry. Well, now we learn that the abortion center at the middle of it all stands accused of manipulating a 15-year-old girl into an abortion against her will and without parental consent. Plus, we'll update you on the battle for life in the Virginia legislature. Welcome to Speak Up Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candy Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, Victoria, before we get into this shocking and very revealing lawsuit about this abortion center, I did want to just catch up on how you're feeling about all this crazy news out there lately. I mean, we've got these mysterious spy balloons from China floating around, and then we've got these artificial intelligence things in our search engines. Which one do you find more disturbing?
All of the above. Is that a fair answer? I laughed though when the spy balloon thing happened about the Babylon Bee's reaction to it. I don't know if you saw the title. They said something like, President Biden will shoot it down after it's done spying. And I thought, why did we do that? So yeah, I was a little disturbed by that whole thing. But AI long term might be more scary.
Well, the thing, about President Biden shooting them down, because we do nothing for days.
Right. Why do we let them watch? I mean, let's surveil the whole country, and then we'll do something.
And then we're shooting down, apparently, people's little science projects.
Oh, no, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, there was, this little young science club, and they're like, where's our little balloon?
Oh, gosh.
Did you guys hear about the Goodyear balloon?
No.
At NASCAR? Yeah, well, so Goodyear... it has an LED screen on the bottom so it can do messages, and it wrote, "Don't shoot."
It should, because apparently who knew? That's crazy. That I would say this. I had no idea that a balloon would ever be used in spying. I guess I'm a little naive, but I just sort of thought we were a little more high tech than that.
Weird.
It sounds very low tech, but actually I guess it's to avoid all the high tech, right? That's why.
I did think I just stepped back into some retro movie like Sky Captain and Rule of Tomorrow or something. It felt like that. It was just bizarre. But real quick on the artificial intelligence, did you see this New York Times reporter that had this 2-hour chat with, I guess, Microsoft's new artificial intelligence search engine system, and it told him that her name is Sydney, and that she was falling in love with him, and then it started attacking his marriage. So there's debate, and people are actually wondering if this was like a sentient being coming to life, or it was just drawing from all the things from the past that it could collect on the internet.
Okay, so first of all, I have to ask, just because we do these issues, whether these AIs are actually binary, like are they actually male or female? So I have to ask that question
Sydney
because you said it's a
neutral.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe it's not necessarily okay. And then I have to wonder if we are remotely letting them pretend they have emotions or can read emotional state, which I hear is part of it. That scares the dickens out of me. That is horrifying. And I really don't need people weighing in on my marriage. So I can't imagine what this reporter was feeling.
I just don't understand. Our grandparents promised us flying cars in the future, and we rather got lame, home-wrecking, liberal robots instead.
It's just we have woke AI instead.
I mean, I don't know who, like, the age of the people that developed this, but I'm assuming they're roughly my age. Did the millennials learn nothing from Disney's Smart House, where like the house was smart and then it like took over and became the mom and
I remember that.
Locked everyone in? Like, did we learn nothing from the 90s?
Well, I mean, okay, but you raise an interesting point, because in general, this whole AI concept where essentially like it's writing papers for people now, right? And I won't reveal which child, but one of my children told me that one of their friends bragged at school about having an AI paper written for him, and a teacher walked up. So I'm like, this is the future of education. Yeah. But then it caused me to think about this. If these kids all get used to AI when they grow up, so maybe they don't do it during school, but they're going to become adults and they can certainly do that. Then I sit there and think, so it gets more and more intelligent, but the kids, if you're relying on that, you get less and less intelligent, right? You don't have to write your own paper. So then I think, who's going to program the AI down the road? Like, I know AI just sort of programs itself, but if we get dumber and it gets smarter, what happens?
Or if it's just collecting all of our historical dysfunction over the years, then we're just going to get more dysfunctional, because that's what it's drawing from.
It's disturbing.
Which is why we now have a woke AI.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, you could go on and on about that, I think.
All right, well, diving into today's topic, some of you might remember us talking about how we were helping the people in the Bristol, Virginia community with our Safe Zone for Life initiative. And just in a nutshell, what is going on with that is the community is very concerned about being invaded by the abortion industry because this community is surrounded by all these border states, so to speak. You've got West Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee. And a lot of these states are pretty much banning most abortions. But as you know, sadly, here in Virginia, we're still allowing most abortions. So what's happening is these abortion clinics that want to protect their profits, at least one major one that was actually at the heart of the Supreme Court Dobbs case, decided to cross the state line and come over to Bristol, Virginia to protect its profits. It was obviously losing elsewhere. And so the citizens, and a lot of the citizens in Bristol, Virginia, they didn't want their city to become an abortion tourism destination, basically. So that's why we helped them do this Safe Zone for Life rally where they were able to ask their city council to do a pro-life zoning ordinance. And that's still in the works, and we'll be updating you on that later. But in the middle of all this, we just want to report there has been this breaking, unexpected development involving this abortion center that's at the middle of all of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty shocking news, really. And so what you have is a mom, dad, and daughter who together are suing the very same center. You made this point. It's the owner of the center in Mississippi that was at the heart of the Dobbs decision, who is the same center. She owns that. She owns this one that crossed over and owns some other ones. And so it's this key player. So they're suing this owner and some other folks involved. And basically it all has to get proven in court, but what they are alleging is so upsetting. So they're alleging that their 15-year-old daughter was pressured into an abortion at that facility without any of their involvement or consent, which is a law in Virginia.
And keep in mind, the daughter is also saying this as part of the lawsuit. It's not like it's just the mom and the dad saying it. The daughter's also saying.
Yeah, the daughter says she was pregnant. They describe it as a conscious choice that she was going to pursue her pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So you literally have coerced abortion by a facility.
Yeah, if this is true. And it's interesting. My first thought when I was reading all the disturbing facts of this case is that here we are again with apparently this situation where a child is removed from the care of a parent, and you've got these other adults coming in with a totally different agenda, and the child is less vulnerable to that. We already dealt with something like that this year.
Yeah, I mean, it has such themes with what we've been talking about with Sage's Law, where we literally had a child who was removed from the care of their parents, and the next thing we know, they're vulnerable, and these adults are stepping in and steering this child in the wrong direction. It's just amazing the harm that can happen to a child when they are outside the protection of their mom and dad. And so, it's hard to know where to start because this case has so many details and what they allege is so disturbing. But basically, the details are this. They're suing for $15 million in damages. And so this is going to end up being a big case. Mm-hmm. And again, these are all allegations, but just to kind of lay out what they're saying, basically, you've got this young girl who was removed from her father's care by a DSS worker and was placed, I guess, with a family friend somehow. But basically, it all happened on the same day or right around the same day that there's now this appointment, and she ends up getting this abortion. And I also have to note that this is in Dickinson County, and the abortion is in Bristol. That's at least probably an hour or more. So it's not like they drove to the store. I mean, they took this girl into another county to have this abortion, and it basically says that this DSS worker pressured her and that the teen was taken to this facility. And I'm just going to read from the complaint here. It says, quote, "The minor informed the facility director that she didn't want an abortion and that she wants to keep her baby. And she remained upset through the process, initially refusing to cooperate with the abortion." So, and then it goes on to conclude that basically they explained that the abortion director and the DSS worker, basically the social services worker, eventually persuaded her to have an abortion.
Okay, this part is just really heartbreaking to me. But before I get into the details here, I do want to give a quick A parent warning that if you have little ones around, we are going to get into some really disturbing details, so you will want to distract them or just put them in a different room or something temporarily. But having said that, this lawsuit says this young teen girl was pressured into a chemical abortion, which is done by taking 3 pills, 1 to kill the baby and the other 2 to expel the child. And it says, quote, the legal complaint says, quote, she left the facility and within 48 hours, her dead baby was expelled from her body. And then it explains that this whole process created, quote, significant pain for her. That really is just makes you just kind of want to be still for a moment, recognize what's going on there. And Victoria, help us understand from studies and what you know about the type of pain and complications that can arise for a young girl in this type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, this is really terrible. And if a lot of folks in the pro-life community may have seen the movie Unplanned, and that might lay it out the best for people. That was a story of a woman that was, it's a long story, but basically there's a chemical abortion in the middle of the movie, and just the hours and hours of uncontrollable bleeding and thinking that she was going to die. I mean, this woman literally thought she was going to die as a result of the abortion because there was no way this could possibly be the way that it was supposed to go, but vomiting and literally couldn't leave the bathroom for 12 hours because her body's expelling this. And there are so many risks, toxic shock syndrome. I mean, they're bleeding out. I mean, there are so many risks involved with this. The idea that we in any way, at any point in a pregnancy, think that we can hand someone a pill or a series of pills, take a human life from within them, and then just let the process happen unregulated, unhelped by a doctor or a nurse, to me is
or
still...
even counseling professionals.
Counseling. I mean, the idea that you go home and handle this yourself, and then the idea that this child is 15 and expected to do this and outside the care of the love of her mother or father. I mean, your heart breaks that anyone would think this is an okay situation to put somebody in.
Right, and we know women experience natural complications, but this was, if the facts are correct here, what's being alleged, coercion.
Yeah.
You're coercing a child to go through this and then not telling the parents. Yeah, and leaving her to deal with that damage.
Yeah, and there's also this fact, which is a little unclear, in the complaint and in the articles, but basically it says she was about 3 months pregnant. We know that the chemical abortion pill is not supposed to be used after about 11 weeks. And then it says something about sort of the ultrasound is unclear. I don't even understand what that means. But what we know is that so many laws have been removed from Virginia's books that the requirement to definitively know the gestational age through an ultrasound no longer exists. So they're guessing. They're playing around if they aren't absolutely looking for and doing a good ultrasound and making sure they know the gestational age. And it's possible that they should not have even done a chemical abortion at that point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned that the attorney is saying they took the daughter from the father's care on or close to the same day that she was taken to the abortion center and basically pressured into ending the life of her child. But there's another situation in this that makes that look even worse. And that is, according to the legal complaint, the very next day after the abortion, the social services staff apparently or allegedly tried to retroactively get permission from courts to skirt the parents.
Yeah, that's not a thing. Just FYI for everybody that's paying attention to this, it is not a thing to avoid. So the one law still on the books in Virginia is parental consent, that you have to have a parent's not just knowledge, but sign off that they are involved to care for a child if they're going to go through an abortion. And the idea, and the only, you can get around that in one way, which is that if there's abuse, so if a child is in a home with a parent that they think will abuse them as a result of the pregnancy, they can go to a judge and petition for a judicial bypass before.
The whole point is before,
because if the judge says no, this is not how it's supposed to go, then you don't move forward without the parent. And so they did it backwards, and the judge apparently didn't go for it, which I think is good, that we still have a system that says, wait a second, that's not how the law is supposed to work here. The other thing, and this is just another point about the laws that have been removed from our books, we used to have a 24-hour waiting period. And so part of informed consent used to be that you couldn't, in a very short period of time, be put in a situation with an abortion. Part of that is to avoid coerced abortion, to make sure that someone can't literally convince you in a bad moment. Now, we weren't thinking of minors. This would apply to adults as well, but you can't just be coerced into an abortion and then you've carried it out faster than you can even step back from the situation and say, this isn't what I really want.
Yeah. Well, another thing I think is very important that you mentioned is that the lawsuit explains that the girl considered the pregnancy, quote, a conscious choice, of her conscious choice to, have the pregnancy, and it says she intended to take her child to full term and intended to deliver her baby. Now, what sticks out to me about that is that we have been hearing ad nauseum this whole General Assembly about how all these efforts to codify unlimited abortion is all about a woman's choice. But apparently this choice was not acceptable.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. They use words like choice all the time. And you know what's interesting? There were years where we tried to pass a law specifically about coerced abortion. So it was the coerced abortion bill, and we actually tried to pass it. And it's because statistics show anywhere from 40 to 80% of women actually feel coerced into their abortion. Now, how you define that is the difference between 40 and 80%. Are we talking literally, someone is pushing them to the facility, or are you saying, I have absolutely no support, my boyfriend is saying I have to do it? But the fact that so much of that exists, and we clearly have that in this situation. This was not her choice. This is not a choice that she was remotely interested in making. Adults were trying to make this choice for her.
Yeah, all we heard over and over is, this is about women being able to make an individual decision without anyone else involved. None of that coercion is ever mentioned, boyfriends coercing or even family members. And in this case, if this is correct and this plays out to be correct in court, then you have adults actually in social services and at the abortion center.
No one ever talks about coerced abortion. And when we were passing parental consent laws, the argument they would use against us is, what about the parents that want to force their daughter into an abortion? How about that? And yet these are the situations.
We just removed them now from the situation.
Correct. This is the reality. This is why we need the parental consent laws. And it's just unbelievable that they're not being followed. And we actually have a new pro-life organization in Virginia that's trying to help, called Parents for Life, and it's formed by a mom who was in this exact situation, who the school took her 14-year-old daughter to go get an abortion. And so she is now fighting back, saying our parental consent laws aren't being followed. And we see an example of that in this story.
All right, if you are interested in what we are talking about today, make sure you visit familyfoundation.org. And if you want other people to be aware of what's going on, you can help by giving us a 5-star review on the forum, like Apple, where you're listening to this podcast, because that helps elevate it where other people can find it. So give us a 5-star review and share the podcast with other people.
I do feel like here we do need to pause and just kind of say this, because I don't want us to sound like we're glamorizing a teen girl getting pregnant and the idea that she might have chosen that in some way. Obviously, this whole situation from the beginning is a situation that is just devastating. From the very beginning of her being that young and being outside of marriage and having a child. I mean, all of that.
And we don't know everything.
We don't know those
dealing
details.
With.
We don't know any of that. So I just want to make sure that's clear in all of this.
That obviously it's a hard situation from the beginning,
right?
But that doesn't mean that you should remove parents completely from the situation.
That's when parents are needed usually. I mean, that's usually when you need the parents the most, is when it's a hard situation.
Pressure someone into an abortion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I just want to get back to that other point we were talking about, because I think it's so important that we were hearing about over and over in the General Assembly this time. From these legislators that were trying to enshrine unlimited abortion into our Constitution. And they kept trying to justify this, talking about a woman's choice and reproductive freedom. So let's just listen to one of those statements, one of many of those statements from Senator Jennifer McClellan, the lead sponsor of that bill dealing with enshrining unlimited abortion into our state constitution.
Well, first, decisions about when and how to become a parent should be left to individuals, whether it is a decision over sterilization, contraception, or abortion. healthcare decisions, including reproductive healthcare decisions, should be between patients and their providers. This constitutional amendment restores the right that I had during my childbearing years so that my daughter and my son will have those same rights when they reach their childbearing years.
Okay, first of all, did you notice in the example she gave that we had everything? We mentioned sterilization, contraception, and abortion, everything but actually giving birth. I mean, apparently that's not a valued part of reproductive freedom worth mentioning.
No, I mean, this is the thing. This is always the way they describe it. It's like we need freedom to have abortion because it's never about really considering all the options. It's never, I mean, adoption is never discussed in there with any time they're talking about it. The same thing with pregnancy, just carrying your child to term and actually becoming a mom. They never make it sound like that's an equally viable choice when they talk about these things.
Or a good choice, or that life and children are.
Yeah. I mean, I would never say it's an equally valid choice. It is a better choice. But for them, you'd think they'd at least acknowledge that's a valid choice for women.
And you know what's also ironic is if you look at the actual language of this proposed constitutional amendment that Senator McClellan put forth, it actually says, quote, or refers to, quote, the right to make and effectuate one's own decisions about all matters related to one's pregnancy.
No, this is not what they're talking about. They're not actually talking about all options, including giving birth to your child, maybe putting it up for adoption, maybe becoming a mom yourself. Those are not the options that are on the table. And that's always been the irony to me when they talk about, it's called reproductive freedom. Reproduce means you actually create a new human being.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to me that we use these terminology. But no, what they really want in this amendment is actually to make sure that there are no restrictions on abortion, not just the right to abortion, but no restrictions. And the restrictions they're worried about are things like the actual law we have on the books for parental consent, that this girl was supposed to have her parent involved. They want to make sure that that can't exist in the future. They want to make sure all the laws that they struck that would have helped this girl, 24 hours where they absolutely would have had to wait and couldn't have coerced her so fast. They want to make sure that if we could never pass a coerced abortion law that says, look, if you coerce somebody, you are in trouble also. So those are the things that they're actually talking about when they're trying to put forward this constitutional amendment. And it is not about all choices.
Yeah, I think that is very important because you were saying to me that any of those previous regulations that would, try to give women informed consent or have them wait a little bit would have helped in this particular situation.
Oh, even clinic safety laws. People gave us a hard time about clinic safety laws when you were on the left because they wanted to make sure that it was clear that, we were asking for things that were unreasonable. No. These were things that every facility that does anything else had to abide by. But one of the things that's involved when you have clinic safety laws is you actually have inspections. So someone's checking. If they knew someone was checking things like parental consent forms, you'd be less likely to not let this girl or to let the girl go through with an abortion without having parental consent because somebody eventually is going to check those records. All of that is how you create an environment where even if we can't outlaw abortion, at least people, in addition to the unborn child, aren't dramatically harmed like this young girl was.
Or you would have these measures ensuring that you get the proper ultrasound to know what stage of development your baby is. And in this case, if we knew for sure that they knew what stage the baby was at, we would not have these questions about whether a chemical abortion was given too late.
Yeah, and I mean, there was all this hubbub when we tried to pass that law, and ultimately we're successful before it was repealed. But people don't realize that it can be unsafe to do certain types of abortion if you don't know exactly what the gestational age of that child is, a chemical abortion should not be applied because you might be applying that medicine, that's a terrible word for that drug after when it's actually supposed to be applied. And the same thing is true about if third trimester abortions are illegal in Virginia, but you don't know it's a third trimester, then, look, you can do something that's completely illegal and harmful to the woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Well, let's just quickly recap where things stand right now coming out of the General Assembly for this year. The constitutional amendment that we've been talking about failed. Thank you, Lord.
Yes, we are very thankful that it failed. And they tried everything. I mean, they really did. They passed it through the Senate. It died in a House committee, and they tried this very unusual procedure called a discharge motion to actually try to ignore the committee vote that had killed it and bring it to the full floor. I don't know what they thought that would do, because I still think we have 52 pro-life votes on the House floor, but they really wanted to get a House vote at the minimum, if not get this thing passed. So we are very grateful for where we are on that right now.
But on the negative side of things, we did have many good pro-life bills defeated in the Senate.
Yeah, we learned that our Senate Democrats are so extreme, and I say Democrats just because it is a party line issue over there.
Yeah.
Our Senate Democrats are so extreme that they won't allow basic information for women. So there was a good informed consent improvement that they defeated. They won't allow women to even go to, we actually had a bill just trying to create a website that would put all of the support that a woman needs to find when they're pregnant on one website. Mm-hmm. So everywhere you can go to get financial help, they won't even allow that. They wouldn't allow the idea that we're going to administer care when a baby is born after a botched abortion. So at that point, we're talking about a live human being that has exited the womb and is in our world, and they wouldn't even do that. And so we've now seen, and of course, 15-week bill, that was something that really the majority of Virginians agree on. But
banning abortions after the baby
feels pain. Yeah. So I mean, this is just trying to say at this point, at least we can all agree at that moment we're not going to have an abortion. So we really got to see how extreme and how out of step with the average Virginian that our Senate really is.
Yeah, we know from polls that people do not want unlimited abortion, up to birth, or to leave a baby on the table to die. The majority of Virginians do not want that. We can't say that they want to completely ban abortion, but
right.
They don't want the so-called extremist version of this.
Yes,
and that's what we're seeing.
If you look at what the left is saying right now, they're walking around with a poll saying Virginians like the laws where they are. But then if you actually ask Virginians, what are the laws on abortion? They have no idea. They think there's something that they're not. So they think we have these middle-of-the-road abortion laws where we do protect some things and we do make sure that extreme situations don't occur. And so therefore they say, well, yeah, we think the law. Well, Virginians are really very in the middle. And I wish they were where I am. I wish we had the majority of Virginians saying, no, we want to protect all human life. That's our goal, is to bring people to an understanding that this is human life. That's not where they are. But they are absolutely not in favor of not protecting babies born alive. They are absolutely okay with banning abortion from the moment an unborn child feels pain.
Okay, so what do we do now? Obviously, something needs to be done about the Senate. We try not to be political on the show, but it's kind of obvious that all the good pro-life bills were defeated and there was no compromise whatsoever, and it's all ending up in the Senate. So that's an obvious point, but what do you say to people, moving forward that care about the life issue and other family-friendly issues?
Well, I can't help but say we have an election around the corner. I mean, there's no other way to put it that this November we can replace people who are so far outside the mainstream of Virginia. We can actually make better decisions. And so that's the first piece. Our advocacy has to remain faithful. So no matter what happens, we have to be that voice for the unborn. Obviously, as I mentioned, not all Virginians see it our way. They don't understand this as a life issue in some cases. And so it's our job to have those conversations with our friends and neighbors to bring them to the point where they understand this. And then ideally, they're going to vote for people who also would then enact the kinds of laws that we think would protect the unborn and protect situations like this young girl.
I know we hear people saying they don't like to get political, but the reality is these policies do result in either actual lives being saved, actual babies, or babies being killed. So that is a reality. It's up to us to speak up. Just to wrap up, I want to mention to people to tune in next week because we just had too much to cover today, and we couldn't get into some other important updates on laws that we've been tracking in the General Assembly on parental rights and a whole bunch of other things. So we're definitely going to have that wrap up next week. But thank you for tuning in, and anything you have questions on, you can check it out at familyfoundation.org. Thanks for joining us for this week's Speak Up Virginia, brought to you by the Family Foundation. Visit us at familyfoundation.org. That's familyfoundation.org. See you next time, and don't forget, we are stronger when we speak together.